Truly a sight to behold. In this lane, we have Lane Myers and a 68 Camaro. Steve and I are getting ready to do a brake job on a customer's Camaro. So this happens to be a 68. We're going to show you what's involved in doing it. Before we get started, remember to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and subscribe to all of our notifications. That way you'll get a heads up when we upload a new video.
So we're going to remove the front caliper. We're changing the rotor and the wheel bearings and the brake pads on the 68 Camaro. And we're going to remove this pin right here, the cotter pin, slide the pin out, and we can slide the disc brakes out. And there's a couple of 11/16 bolts on the back side of the caliper. When we get over there, we'll show you. We're going to take them off. We put a towel on the tie rod just so we can sit the caliper down there. And then we're going to remove the dust cap from the rotor here and take the bearing off, and we'll get everything removed. So start off, take our pin out here. Move this and slide this out. Then slide the brake pads out. Now, before we slide the pads out, we're going to try and just collapse. These have two pistons on each side. So we're going to take a couple of screwdrivers and we're going to just wedge this in here and collapse. Just collapse the two calipers. These pads are pretty thick, so we're having a problem with the wheel bearing on the other side, so that's why the customer is changing this. We're doing both wheel bearings. We wanted to do both rotors. So, okay, we've got these two collapsed now, and we can just slide the brake pads. It should just come right out. There. This one out here. Now these wore evenly. The other side did not wear evenly, and the pistons are collapsed quite easily. So we don't have an issue with the caliper, but we think there's something else going on the other side. We'll get in there and we'll show you that. So we're going to remove the 11/16 bolts here. Let me grab my socket here. Got one on the top and one on the bottom. We got one up here we're going to get off. Tight to the control arm. Get these down.
5, 6 months. We had a day that was 80 in June.
Just float the caliper around a little bit, and you can loosen the bolts up by hand. We're going to sit the caliper on this towel that we sat on the tie rod assemblies here. Okay. We've got our caliper pistons collapsed. We're just going to gently lay the caliper over here. So it's sitting up here. I don't want it to fall. Okay, so that's good there. And we're going to take the dust cap off the rotor now. The dust cap here. Okay, we got that off. And we're going to take the cotter pin off right here. Bend this back. Pull this out. Okay, we got this locked up. I'm going to take that off. That one was pretty tight. I don't know if it should have been that tight, but get these off. So I'm going to take the nut off here, and then we're going to slip the rotor off with the bearings and everything. And we're going to show you how we repack the bearings. And so you can grab the rotor, slide everything off right here. And so all of this is getting replaced. Now it looks like the bearing stayed on the rotor here. Okay, and that's sliding off nice. And here's our seal that is coming out. That off. We're gonna wipe everything down super clean here, so we're starting off fresh. Right now, the next phase that we're gonna do is we're gonna go and repack the new wheel bearings. And we would use our bearing packing tool, but our boy Brian gave us this super thick grease and it won't work now, so we have to change all the grease. So we're gonna show you guys how to do them by hand. It's very simple to do, a little messy, but that's the route we're gonna go. So we brake cleaned our rotor, so we're all good there. And we bought new bearings, and they come with races, but the rotor already comes with the race. So we're just gonna match it up to make sure that it's the same size, and it is. And we just sit our bearing in, dry. Okay, we know it fits good, so we're good there. So, and the outside bearing is the same thing. We checked that race on the back side already. It fits right in, so we're good there. So we're gonna repack these wheel bearings old school. If you guys don't have a bearing packer, this is how you can go about doing it. So it's a little messy, but you know what? It is what it is. So just take some grease, you put it into the palm of your hand, and you want to take your bearing, and you're going to keep rubbing your bearing like this until we get grease pouring out of the top of it. And that's ensure that all the grease is up through the bearing rollers. Now we do have a bearing packer, but like I said, our good friend Brian filled it with grease for our motorhome that's as thick as mud, and you cannot get that grease to come through here. So see how the grease is starting to spring up through here? That's the way you want to do it. Then you can just relocate your fingers and move over a little bit, and you keep going until you get grease popping up all the way through that. And it takes a little time. You take your grease out of the center of this thing and put it back into your palm here, and just keep going. So it's all springing up there. Just keep digging into the grease pile. It comes up. We've got grease just about almost all the way around now. And you know what? You just do this until you make sure that it's all coming through. And these things, the rotors, there's always a big void in the middle of the rotor where you can really stuff some grease in there. And the grease will end up finding its way in. But you want to make sure that you're getting grease all the way up through these, right from the very beginning. You don't just put grease on the outside of the bearing and fill the hub up. It's not going to cut it for you. So
I've seen somebody do that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the packer is nice. You sit it on the floor, you put it in, you put the cap on, you step on it, and it forces the grease right up. But I got to get all the old grease out of that from the motorhome. I don't know what the hell grease Brian bought, but it's so thick. Okay, so I've got grease coming up all the way around here. I'm going to put some more over on the side over here. And I'm going to take the extra grease that I got here and just put some on the inside of this thing, because you can get a lot on the inside of this cup here, and it's going to find its way around. So it's a little messy, but okay, so I got this one, sit this one in. Okay, and I'm going to just pull this around like this, clean this up a little bit, and we're going to put our seal in a few minutes. But we're going to go ahead and get this the outside bearing done first. Same procedure. See the grease coming up through it right there? So just rotate our finger around. Okay, now it's really oozing out. Okay, so this bearing is completely covered. So we're good with this. When we put them on, you're going to do a preload where you snug them up a little tight. The grease is going to ooze out. You back off the bearing, we'll show you, and then you snug it up a little bit more. And there's not a lot of tension on these bearings. They are small. So we're going to get our hands cleaned up here. Put a little more grease in here. I got left over. I'll just stick down in here. When I put the spindle in, it's going to push it through. and then that'll be the grease that we need to compensate on the other side. And we're not going too crazy with the grease, but we're not being minimal with it. So I'm going to clean up my hands here, and then we'll show you how to tap this seal in. All right, so we got our seal. We're going to put it in. It goes in like this. So we're just going to scrape this out right here, put it in the middle, so that this is pretty clean. And set the seal down in here. Just going to use a small hammer, tap this thing down. Okay, so I can feel it on the surface here that it is clean and it's level all the way around. It's recessed down just a hair, so I'm good with that. So we're going to get this thing set up so that we can slip this onto the new hub over here. I'm going to put my bearing on the inside of this thing right now. I'm going to take a little more grease and just put some, on the inside here. I can put my bearing in here. Okay. We've got our spindle all cleaned up over here. Everything's been wiped down. And slide the rotor on. And our bearing in there. Now this one smooths, turns nice and smooth. The other one was rubbing on the bracket. We're going to address that. We've got our washer on there. We've got our nut. We'll snug this down, wipe our hands, and then we're going to do the preload on the bearing. Now we've got plenty of grease on the internals of the rotor. We packed our bearings well, and we also put a little grease on the inside of the races, so it's plenty of grease in there. Let's take our water pump pliers. I'm going to snug this up so that it's tight. Now that's preloading it. Then we back it off, then we spin it, and then we're just snugging it up. So we have to line up our hole for the cotter pin over here. So we're going to see if it's lined up right now. And we're going to put a new cotter pin, but we're just going to line it up with this one for now. And so the hole is over here. Yeah, it's right here. So we're going a little snug right there. Okay, so it's right here. And we have it so it's not too tight. We can spin the rotor. And this is where our comfort spot is right here. And that's all you have to do. You're not going to crank this thing down. These bearings are small. You'll burn that bearing out. So we're going to grab a new cotter pin, put that in there, and then bend that over and pop our cap on and we get some new cotter pins. Okay, we got our new cotter pin going down in there. We're going to bend it over. Apply this here. Cut this side off. Clean this up. We're going to put a little bit of never-sees on the outside of this so that our wheel doesn't have an issue sticking to it. And we're going to take our cap right now and we can just tap our cap back on. Okay, that's on, and when you spin the rotor, it's nice and smooth. That's what we want. So now we're gonna put our caliper, bolt it back onto the bracket. Now we're gonna take some caliper pin lube, and we're going to lube the boots up so that they don't dry out. And then we can slip the caliper on, and these are set up where you can slide the brake pads right on after. So let's lube these up. We'll bolt the caliper back on with the 2 bolts here, and then we will slip the brake pads inside. We're just going to put some lube around the piston boots here. Try and keep them moist, and you got 4 on these. Grab a little more. Okay, and our brake pads are going to be sliding down on these bars right here on the inside of the caliper. Here's where the brake pads slide. So we want to put a little lube on those. This is a pretty, dare I use the word primitive, but you know, back in the 60s, this is what you got. So, but it worked. So now I have the caliper, and we're going to make sure it's not twisted. So we have to slide the pads into the inside of this thing, and the other one slid right out. These things just are not going in. So we put them on the inside here, trying to get the pin to line up here and get it to go through this one. And I'm gonna squeeze the pads and then work this caliper to line up onto the bracket again. And it's easier said than done, I can tell you that. That hole to line up there. I'm almost just more concerned about getting the bracket fall in place so I can get the hole started. All right, that one's there. But oh, it's right there. It just wants to be a stickler. Okay, so now we just got to get the holes lined up on this thing. I'm going to tap it down a little bit. All right, now let's line up the holes. They were pretty tight. I don't know if these brake pads are just a little real thick. You know, I got new rotors and pads, so everything's, the pistons are completely collapsed all the way down to the bottom. And so we're, let's get our bolts put back in here. Looks like this washer is a little large, both of these. So we're gonna get a couple of new washers. Okay, get the bottom one started. And get this top one, put new washers on so they're nice and tight now. And you don't want to strip anything. One of them snug down, it usually puts the caliper back in the flat position when you need it. And sometimes it can help you get the other bolt started. And that's what I'm thinking is going to happen with this one here. So alright, so I just snugged it, and this one seems like it's helping it. Alright, so we got a 5/8 gear wrench to tighten this top one up, and breaking our ass trying to get it to start. Put new washers on it, get the pin in, and get this thing snugged up, and then we're going to pull this pin out and lube it for the brake pads, and then put our cotter pin, new cotter pin in. Gear wrench is going to tighten it down so much, and we'll have to use the ratchet with the deep socket here. This back in here. Just have to make sure it started straight, because it didn't want to. Okay, tight. Okay. Bottom one's tight. Now we're gonna push this pin out, because now all our brake pads aren't really gonna move. And we're gonna just put some never-sees on this. You know, where it's gonna ride. Slide that back in there. Okay. And we're gonna get a new little tiny cotter pin for it. A little tiny cotter pin here. Pop it through the hole. And we'll bend it over. And we're gonna probably trim this one because it's too long. So bend both of them over and we'll just trim them off so they look clean. Okay, that's it. It's all bent over. Now we just clean the bracket off with the little brake clean. Make sure that there's no smudges on the rotor. We'll clean that. And this side is all back together. So we went over the wheel bearings, repacking them, got the new rotor on, we dried it with, cleaned it with brake clean to get the oil residue off. And on the caliper, like I said, we were able to just slide the pads right out, but didn't want to go back in that way. And we had collapsed all the pistons. The pistons kind of flop around inside there. They're pretty loose. So we put the brake pads in while the caliper was off and then spread it out, and we were able to slide the caliper back onto the rotor that way there. Got our pin lubed up. Everything's lubed. We lubed our slides with the brake caliper pin lube so the brake pads will slide in the slots in the caliper. And that'll be it.